The Week 1 Football Outsiders recap. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching. I'm Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst here at Football Outsiders, and joining me as he will every Monday is Mike Tanier, Senior Analyst for Football Outsiders as well. Mike, how did Week 1 treat you so far? I know we still got one game left, but pretty much all the games are in the books.
I was happy because I got a reasonable night's sleep last night because that game was a snoozer at the end. And it's like, all right, I got 5 hours of sleep. I'm ready for my live stream and everything else I have to do. And then, I missed the Dak Prescott injury at the end. Kind of a big news story there, but it's a heck of a thing to wake up to.
Yeah, same. Like I didn't see the whole game last night either. It's first year that I haven't been, on the Edge Sports side, typically on my couch, glued to the TV, watching every single play of every game. So missed a little bit, and that was one of them. But yeah, definitely the biggest news, I think, that and TJ Watt, which we'll get to some of those years ago. But there were some huge performances this weekend, especially fantasy. So some guys had some performances that are making their teams and some are breaking them. Either way, some of you may already be tired of your season-long fantasy football leagues. If you are, try out Underdog Fantasy. It's the fastest-growing company in fantasy sports. Use promo code OUTSIDERS to double your deposit up to $100. You can play in best ball tournaments. Could play in best ball tournaments preseason, but win up to $10 million in total prizes at $2 million to first place in those best ball tournaments if you're there. For a fantasy team, you don't have to manage those in season. They also have some pick'ems that are basically like creating a parlay from games. You can go between games and choose different props, basically, and there's some big payouts on those as well. So that is available for Underdog Sports, and that's promo code OUTSIDERS for a free deposit match up to $100 at UnderdogFantasy.com or on your favorite app store. Now, jumping into, we mentioned the big lead, is the Mike McCarthy era already over in Dallas? That Dak Prescott injury doesn't help his case, kind of gives him an excuse, but I think there have been a lot of excuses made for him already over the last, 2 years he's been there? It seems like he's been there for an eternity.
Yeah, that's right. And that's exactly what I first thought when I discovered the severity of the injury. It's like, this could be the McCarthy get out of jail free card. Like we all know Sean Payton's like looking over his shoulder. Jerry's been making goo-goo eyes at Sean Payton. But the quarterback was hurt. What could I do? I think that could work for a lot of head coaches, in a lot of different circumstances. But you're absolutely right. This would be the second time in 3 years playing that card. And there's also the reality of what that team looked like going into the fourth quarter. Like the Cowboys looked absolutely lost for the entirety of that game. And that might be a theme as we talk about week one. It's like this team looked lost and that team looked lost and that looked like a complete failure. And we know we're not supposed to jump to conclusions. But the Cowboys just coming out and tripping over the gate where nobody except Micah Parsons even looks like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
After 3 years, this is and now Prescott being gone, this is sort of a DEFCON 1 situation for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, we know this is everyone's favorite week. It's overreaction week, coming out. One game, it's a long season. Some of the teams, like even the Bills, looked great on Thursday night. They may not make the Super Bowl. Things are going to happen. They've got a very good shot, too. They're obviously the favorites. But the Cowboys, it's been a couple years now. The Dak Prescott was hurt. They didn't do well. Came back last year, make it to the playoffs, and then lose to the 49ers in that game that really don't want to say they had no business losing, but they really had no business losing. The 49ers were hot, but the Cowboys just are not able to get it done. McCarthy took that time off from Green Bay. Being a Packers fan, I know it got pretty bad there towards the end. Rodgers wasn't playing great either, but I think part of that we know had to do with just that offensive environment. It wasn't great. And now, it's just kind of – it looks like he hasn't really improved from his time back before. And last year, the big thing was penalties, and now we're back to injuries, and he's out, I think they said could be up to 8 weeks now. And it's just really not looking good for them. And, and then who knows how he'll play when they come back. He's kind of – Prescott's always been up and down. I've people, speaking of fantasy, drafted and had him a couple times. It's like he's hit or miss. They had some good games in last year, the Broncos game. They just get absolutely blown out and really don't even look like they were ready to play. So it's been tough, and I think he's one of those guys that's probably one of the more polarizing, not only quarterbacks but athletes in the league, where you've got people that think he can be a franchise quarterback and others that just think he's trash, honestly.
and he's got Teflon among his supporters, and among his detractors, nothing he ever does is right. And you're right, like Prescott's elite except for the 3 to 5 games where he's not. Yep. And when those games happen, we discover there's an injury we didn't hear about or something that's bothering him. And I was waiting for 3 quarters to hear about the cleats. Like, you know what the problem is? It was the cleats. It was the bad sneakers and the pina colada, my friends. That's the reason why Prescott's playing poorly now. So it's got to be the shoes money. Like, I was waiting for that to come along, but it's not necessarily that. And yeah, I'll say this. A lot that's wrong with the Cowboys. Like, you start with the Amari Cooper trade. They trade Amari. They don't get market value for him because Jerry Jones pulls the trigger before seeing that the market value is like
way too early.
Way too early. First round picks, you know. They go out and they draft Tyler Smith. Then Tyron Smith gets injured, but they don't know how to replace Tyron Smith, even though they just drafted Tyler Smith. This is like, you know, too much tequila on Friday night. And you can't make these decisions. Nothing will change as long as Jerry and Stephen Jones are part of the decision-making process. It goes from Jerry to Stephen, or really it's Stephen to Stephen to with Jerry, you know, in the corner stomping his feet, and then it goes to McCarthy. That can change if Sean Payton comes in. And Sean Payton would come in with Bill Parcells level authority. He'd demand it, obviously. He's like, I'll sit in the booth rather than like go to this circus situation. And that's the thing that could get meaningful change. So it's not just that you're like replacing McCarthy with a better coach. You have the potential to put in a real system the way they had when Parcells was running things.
Yeah, so it's just a lot going on in Dallas. Was it you that had the Dallas chapter, that wrote the Dallas chapter this year?
It was not. Tom Basinger, I believe.
Okay, it was, but my favorite line there is like, you know, Dallas, they're almost content to just be content. Like, year-round, they're going to be a story. They're going to make their money. They're going to sell what they need to sell. Not saying that they don't try to put together a team that's going to win the Super Bowl. Obviously, that's what they want to do. But at the same time, they're always going to be talked about, whether they're having a good year, a bad year, an average year. Like, they're always going to be at the forefront of the conversation. I know people get tired of it. So I guess we could probably come off of that now and talk about some other teams, unless there's anything else you want to add to that before we move on from our biggest story, though.
Right. Aaron just pointed out Rivers wrote the Dallas chapter. And it wouldn't be a live stream here if we didn't disrespect Rivers for some reason. Rivers, and he did a hell of a job on what you said, and what he said was absolutely right. And we do have a question here from Mike Kurtz. That did Tua have a good game yesterday? The box score looks great, but Mike keeps saying he's trash, and I'm guessing that means me. I keep saying he's trash. I don't know. Did you catch that game at all?
I didn't see a ton of it. I did see it was actually going to cover the Jalen Waddle touchdown on fourth down. I know Tyreek Hill had, I think 9 10 touches, 100 yards. Like, overall, it seemed like, they again. I was more seeing the box score and just kind of seeing highlights here and there. But I mean, I've expected Tua to have a really good year this year. I know one thing I've kind of been looking forward to seeing. Another thing from the ALMANAC, saw Tua had the best deep ball rate last year. Was the best at deep balls, like a 50% rate, I think. But there wasn't a high sample size there. Right. So it was one of those questions to be answered: is he actually a good deep ball thrower, or was it just he was a product of a small sample size, and over the long haul he's not going to be as good? But it seemed like he did what needed to be done yesterday. From the little bit that I saw, they got the win. Scored 20 points. I think one of them was a defensive touchdown, actually. But I mean, decent enough. I don't know if he's great, but
yeah, decent. Like, there were several plays. Now, first of all, the offensive line was a disaster, and the Patriots, whatever you want to say about the Patriots and their offense, which is a joke at this point, but they get after the quarterback, and they were just running to it all over creation. So to it, like that's part of the problem. Still very shaky getting rid of the ball. And there were at least 2, and I swear there were 3 times, where Tua is going to the ground, like in the arms of the defender, and he chucks, I got my left hand out, he chucks the ball like straight down into the dirt here. And he gets away with it. I don't think they call grounding on it, although several of them look like grounding.
Just like Bryce Young on Saturday for Alabama.
oh my God.
That's exactly what that reminds me of. That was...
I was like in what's happening mode for that. Like, change the channel. It's college football. There's always something else on.
Yeah.
But not only does Tua get away with not getting called for grounding on these, but of course, you're flapping your arms around when you're going to the ground. That's a strip sack waiting to happen. So there were a couple plays like that. There was a deep throw to Tua where Tua just basically had to stop and, crack his knuckles and then like just out jump one of the defensive backs. So it wasn't a disaster or anything else like that. But there's people on the internet being Tuanon members and giving the pro Tua agenda out there. Yeah. And if Tyreek Hill wasn't doing all the Tyreek Hill stuff, that would have been like a 9-7 game.
Yeah. And speaking of intentional grounding calls, we had the Jameis Winston clock mess up where he spiked the ball when the clock wasn't running because Jarvis Landry was out of bounds.
Right.
Although I know they said they thought he was down and touched in bounds, but still that's pretty funny. And I think it was I know Aaron was looking on Twitter for asking, like, has this happened before? Like, not being a rhetorical question, like, need to know if we count that. I think it was Mitchell Schwartz that said they had one against Cleveland back in like 2018. But I think Aaron said it didn't get included in DVOA, but so it's not often you see a quarterback spike the ball when the clock's not even running. So just a little bit of a mix up there. Speaking of that intentional ground.
Jameis is still young. He's still learning. It's only his 9th season in the NFL. He's still developing into that quarterback. Luckily, you're playing the Falcons, and it's the 4th quarter, so you can make mistakes. And now it's like a matching deposit. The Falcons will make a mistake alongside you.
Yeah, another big collapse. I saw there was a bakery down in New Orleans making 26-10 cakes. Just like the scoreboard, like from the Super Bowl after New Orleans made that comeback to win. So just another thing for New Orleans to have against Atlanta in that rivalry.
Another thing for the world to have against Atlanta.
Yeah, another big story from the weekend was struggling kickers. Cincinnati-Pittsburgh was the biggest one. Tons of missed kicks, reminded me of last year's Cincinnati and the Green Bay game. In that game, at least, there was a lot of wind with McPherson and Crosby going back and forth, and it was finally a kick to win it in overtime. Yeah. But that one misses, blocked extra point that we never even would have really had this discussion. But Minkah Fitzpatrick coming through to get the block on the extra point. Right. Indianapolis, Rodrigo Blankenship missed one that would have won the game. And then Tennessee, shockingly losing and missing a field goal there. So it seems like every year, we have one of these weeks where guys miss extra points, but there were a lot of missed field goals late in games that were basically, would have been game winners, given opportunities. But just kind of a crazy day when it comes to that.
It was, and of course, I think the Cincinnati-Pittsburgh game was the main one where, and I'm in a Philadelphia sports bar, and people are just howling and laughing and clapping at the chaos. One, conditions were a little wet there, right?
In Cincy, I think a little bit. I know it rained. I'm in Louisville, and it rained a little bit throughout the day. And I think they had some. I don't think it rained throughout the game, but this area did see a good amount of rain.
It looked like the Bengals were having trouble with the snap and hold too. And McPherson
That's another thing on I think it was in overtime, or it was either at the end of regulation, or no, it would have been overtime, where they went out, they sent the field goal unit out on 3rd down to kick the field goal in case you get a bad snap. It was a high snap, struggled to get it down. And at that point, I'm thinking, you've just got to fall on it. You still get 4th down. You didn't kick it. You get another chance on 4th down. But they had some shows. It was a new long snapper too. I think they had an injury to their other one, or they have a new one for this year, something like that.
Right. So that was a problem on that end. And Aaron is here. He's listening to us right now. And like everything we learned at Football Outsiders over the decades about kickers is like when you see a kicker having this incredible hot streak, you don't overreact to it. Kickers are streaky unless you're Justin Tucker, or you suck your way out of the league after early. There are going to be these ups and downs. Now, Evan McPherson had a lot of ups in that playoff run. He's a young kicker who was absolute money down the stretch, and you don't want to say he's due. That's the gambler's paradox, but there are going to be ups and downs, and that was an example of an up and down there. As for those other kickers, I tell you, Tennessee, don't be in a position where you need a game-winning field goal against the Giants. Yeah. Don't be in that position. You've got just standard kicker X and Randy Bullock. You put yourself in this position because you don't have any wide receivers anymore, and you are letting Saquon Barkley go hog against you. And so you're there. Similar thing for the Colts, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit. Don't be in overtime against the Texans. Okay?
Yeah.
They have a good kicker. I think he made some kicks earlier in that game. Don't be in that situation, because then you have that random element coming in.
Yeah, they made a good comeback. They were down, was it 20-7, I think, and came back to win, or to tie the game and get to overtime. But then Tennessee, I think on that drive where they're setting up the field goal, they didn't hand the ball to Derrick Henry once. Like, they got close. They got within 50. It was still a long field goal, but I think they did like a Tannehill kind of just keeper. And then I forget what they even did on the other play, but I saw a couple of make points. Like, give it to Henry. Get yourself 5 more yards, which we've seen the difference. 5 yards in a field goal when you're in the upper 40s or even in the 40-yard range, even below, is a big difference when it comes to your probability of making that kick.
I believe it. And then I think they had one timeout left in that final drive, a minute and a half left. And it was a torturous drive. It was a penalty drive. It was, incomplete pass, 5 yards defensive holding, incomplete pass, 5 yards for this. That's how they matriculated down the field. So I don't know where you could have fit a Henry run in there. Like you'd have to have the most cleverly designed plays where you get right up to the line with it. But again, this is a problem that's going to be sort of endemic to what the Titans are doing, is that their only way to win is by working Henry like a punch press over and over and over again. And Henry did look pretty good. He's not washed as I might pretend he is when I'm, doing my routine here. But when that's all you got, wait and see what week 4, week 5, week 12 look like.
Yeah, and it was kind of surprising to see Henry got thrown through the air on one of his runs. I forget who it was for the Giants, but one of those things that has been all over the highlights today, going through the hole and just getting hit from the side. And that's not something you see often with usually Derrick Henry is delivering those blows. But yeah, it was Henry, like you said, wait till we get with them to get into week 4, week 5. Like it's a bad loss, but at the same time, the Giants, Daboll coming in, they could be a lot better than. I know we're not projecting them very well, but they could end up being a little bit better than what teams are expecting. It's one of those things. You said week 1, you never know. You never really know.
You never know. There was some non-repeatable stuff going on in that Giants game and it's like, okay, Saquon breaks loose.
Yeah.
And that's great. And then as Shepard got deep and like it was not sequential offense. They had a couple big plays. So we'll see. By the way, Todd Singer pointing out, and I didn't realize this, that they were having a problem with the kickoff specialist, Indianapolis Colts. It's kind of thing that even when you're watching 12 games, the kickoffs kind of get wobbly there. But that's a good hint. Hey, Todd Singer, I don't know if you saw any fullbacks for the Chargers scoring touchdowns yesterday, but I'll just leave that out there for our favorite Purdue fan here.
I think there was a deep tight end scoring for the Chargers as well. Horvath, I don't even know his first name.
That's the fullback from Purdue.
Oh, he's a fullback. I thought I saw he was like one of their deep tight ends. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still struggling in short yards. That was a good play. They failed a 2-point conversion after that. They got into a third and short. It was like every nightmare of the Chargers from last year when, especially Football Outsiders, were like, 4th down conversion. That's the way to go. Brandon Staley's going to be our hero on this. 3rd and 1. Let's give it to little Eckler. He gets stuffed. 4th and 1. Let's have Herbert try and do the sneak, and like the entire Raiders defense is collapsed on the sneak.
Got stuffed on that one too.
Yeah, your team is awesome. You have to put Khalil Mack in a short yardage situation. Put him in and let him run it. Like try something.
Yeah, like you said, Brandon Staley. Sticking with. We like to see that though. Sticking with that 4th down aggressiveness. We'll see if he sticks with it when he's on his own 20 or something this year. After we got to imagine them to stay aggressive. But, still got the win. Good game. And I think the Raiders were down big early and came back and made that a game. But, the Chargers, I think, are going to be very tough. I know there are favorites, I think, slightly over the Chiefs to win that division. But the Chiefs, man. Patrick Mahomes, we were just talking about that before we started. Mahomes having a game where some people are putting him down in the bottom of the top 10 of quarterback performances this week, but it looked like the best quarterback in the league yesterday.
Yeah, some people are going to say a lot of things. That was a heck of a performance. Up there with what Josh Allen did. Josh Allen threw a couple picks, but overall it was like a stellar performance there. And that's Thursday night. Thursday night is Chargers-Chiefs. Yes. So we had what looked like a great Thursday night on paper last week, and it was like, okay, the Bills kind of slowly ran away with it. We've got another one this week, and I'll be able to watch all of this one, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it was last year also in week 2 that Chargers and Chiefs played. That's the one where Staley was aggressive on 4th down, went for it. They converted like a 4th and medium, 4th and long. And then, they played 2 great games last year, so those – getting to be one of the most anticipated games each year. I think we get to see it twice.
Yeah, it should be a Roman numeral game. It should be Mahomes, Herbert, whatever it is, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 now, or maybe it's 4 because there was a Tyrod game in there or something.
Yeah, just keep them going. But well, that takes us into talking about we've got new faces and new places. Week 1, always seeing some debuts, guys with new teams Going to start off with the most impressive debut with a new team. You mentioned this guy once already. I think your pick. I've seen, obviously, he's been all over the place yesterday and today with the game that he had. Who's your pick? Who'd you pick as the most impressive debut with a new team?
It would be Khalil Mack of the Los Angeles Chargers. He had 3 sacks, kind of a takeover game. Also, one of those run stuffs. They had a big run stuff. I think it was on 3rd and short. And Mack and I forget who the other defender is, were the guys who slammed in on Brandon Jacobs. Run stuffs for the Chargers are a big thing. They could not stop the run at all last year. So exciting to watch, exciting what they were doing with him. Joey Bosa had more singled up opportunities, so he had a big game. They're doing things like putting Mack and Derwin James on the same side of the formation and having them both rush from the same side of the formation. Well, good luck with that. They got an early sack, and the announcers were like, well, the left tackle there kind of whiffed. Yeah, he whiffed. Like you can only block one of them. So
I would say it'd probably be more surprising if he didn't whiff in that situation.
Right.
But so you mentioned Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's an example of a guy that you bring in, and it's everything you hope for in week 1 to solve the problem he was born on to solve.
Yeah, and you mentioned their run defense struggled last year. I know they made some moves. They didn't do as much as we would have liked them to do to solve that run stop. They've spent some money and allocated a lot of resources to the pass defense. And this one, J.C. Jackson, I don't even think he played in this one. And they still, looked really good. And like I said, if you're able to stop the pass, as they get throughout the year, maybe the run won't matter as much, but looked good. Yes, like you said, they stuffed them quite a bit and just came away with the win. The Raiders, we mentioned, did make it a game a little bit later, but Khalil Mack, definitely. As long as he can stay healthy, that seemed to be his biggest problem in Chicago was injuries. When he was on the field, he's going to produce. But staying healthy is going to be the key there.
Right. Now, who'd you pick?
Mine, I actually, for both of these, kind of went the cheating route, went with 2 guys. They're both receivers. Devontae Adams, that same game, 10 catches, 141 yards, a touchdown. He actually had more yards than Green Bay's wide receivers had combined. That's, I guess, kind of a product of Devontae Adams being very good and Aaron Rodgers hating all his receivers, especially after Christian Watson drops that wide open touchdown. Very frustrating to me to see. But yeah, Devontae Adams, there was a lot of questions. With all the weapons in that offense, he was gonna get his, and he's gonna be a focal point. Him and Derek Carr, real good buddies, almost died together whitewater rafting years ago. But he went out, just had a phenomenal game, and then AJ Brown as well. We kind of more questions I think there surrounding just how much Philly's going to pass and how successful Jalen Hurts can be throwing the ball. He ran the ball a ton. I think 17 carries for 90 yards, scored a touchdown. But AJ Brown had 10 catches for 155 yards. 13 targets, didn't score, but that's still a great game. And I think 128 of them were at halftime. Didn't have as much after the fact, but they were up so big in the second half there for a while. But AJ Brown and Devontae Adams, and I'm actually going to throw a third one in there. Zadarius Smith seemed like he was all over the place against Green Bay and came in saying that's why he went to Minnesota to play Green Bay twice a year and got Rodgers one time, and you could see them kind of joking around, having some fun because he got hit maybe a little bit late. Or a little bit of an extra force on one of those hits, but Zadarius Smith had a really good game with Minnesota. Yeah. So moving on to the flip side now, the least impressive debut with their new team. I don't think this will really surprise anyone that you pick here. Really just didn't do enough. But I'll let you reveal who was the least impressive in their debut with a new team.
Yeah, Matt Ryan in the 2020 tie of the Texans, and watch the game in real time. And on the one hand, I get some of the other problems that are going on with the Indianapolis Colts offense. I did miss the kickoff issue, but I saw them getting into the red zone and Ryan looking into the end zone and not having the ideal targets out there and trying to fire balls to guys like Alec Pierce. And there was another young man whose name I forget, who is not Pittman, that dropped a catchable ball. There were some balls that were just in there that I wouldn't call them drops, but he had to force the ball to a receiver who's not going to make a play for him. They went with Nyheim Hines on a wildcat play in the goal line. So there were times they came away from what should have been touchdown with 0 points, 3 points. And that was one of the reasons that contributes to the 2020 tie. So I saw that, and I saw all the strip sacks and all the interception, the screen pass interception. It looked very Wentzian, and a couple other turnover-like plays along the way. But The problem with Ryan right now is that it's supposed to be the veteran quarterback experience, the super professional leadership guy experience. You're not necessarily getting Tom Brady, but you're going to get that thing where, first of all, you beat your bad team, your crappy division opponent who can only put up 20 points. That's supposed to be your win. And secondly, fourth quarter, minute and a half left. We just talked about it. Ryan Tannehill, minute and a half left. The Titans get in the field goal range. Frank Reich was like handing off. Frank Reich was like, we only got to about the 30-yard line. There was still a timeout on the table. Let's just go to overtime. If that's what you're doing with Matt Ryan, then you're saying Matt Ryan is not that guy. And if Matt Ryan is not that guy, what are you doing if you're the Colts? So if that's what the Colts are doing, we're going to tie the average teams with this guy, and we're going to do the Wency stuff. Then caveat emptor. That was a bad decision to bring him in.
Yeah, and you mentioned, late in the game and kind of playing maybe for a tie or Lovie Smith is getting kind of taking a lot of heat right now. They had, I forgot what exactly it was, but bring it up here. 4th and 3 at the Indy 49 with 20 seconds left in overtime, choosing to punt instead of go for it. Talk about playing for the tie. We saw Frank Reich, I think it was, against Houston in overtime a few years ago, do the exact opposite. And he went for it like on his own, like 40, and Houston, I think, ended up winning on a field goal. But when you're a team like Houston, you're not expected to be good. We expect them to be a little bit better than they were last year. But you don't play for the tie. When you're Houston, a tie is not going to help you in the long run this year. Most of the time it doesn't anyway, but sometimes it can help you later in the season. But you're Houston, you got to play for the win there. Like, you're at midfield, I get it, you're Houston, and it's the Colts, but 20 seconds left. You're not leaving them really a ton of time. Indianapolis used a timeout and still had one left, it looks like, but that's just a tough decision there on that side as well.
Yeah, the Texans are a 1980s NHL team. Let's play for the tie on the road, get the point, and all that other things along the way. But that was it. Like, they spent the Texans took a 20-point or 20-3 lead, and then it was the pure Lovey experience where we're not going to force the ball anywhere downfield. We're going to play a lot of cover 2, tamper 2, the Lovey 2 system, and that's why the final Colts drive, it was a lot of handoffs to Jonathan Taylor. It's like, oh, you're going to play that soft. Then we're going to Quentin Nelson with his $60 million contract in his back pocket and Taylor behind. We're going to steamroll, get 12, 15 yards at a time. And that's great. It works. It's also sort of undermining the concept of, hey, we brought in Matt Ryan, so we're a fundamentally different team. Like, no, you're a team that when seeing zone coverage, like, oh, let's run the ball and let's see if that works. Hey, we got a fantasy question. I'm going to throw it at you. From Rendon Dye. Would you trade Javonte Williams for the Broncos for Debo?
Oh, those are always tough, not seeing that team, who they've got, who the other team, knowing the league and stuff. But Debo, I don't think is going to repeat what he did last year. I think he had based on where he got his touches, he scored like 8 more touchdowns than he would have expected to. But I mean, he's going to be a focal point of that offense. Javonte, I don't really know what to think of Javonte Williams. All the talk, they're going to go with the hot hand. It's going to be a split. Melvin Gordon is still good. He was actually higher in DVOA and DYR last year, I believe. If I remember, those are stats for you guys listening. Most of you are probably familiar with us, but you can get those at footballoutsiders.com. Our FL Plus subscription you can get as well. That gives you access to more advanced stats, fantasy rankings, betting picks every week, as well as some premium articles. So that's available, again, footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. But yeah, Javonte, it's really hard to know how they're going to use him, if he's going to get enough work. Debo, we know, can be a top 10 receiver in fantasy. He can score from anywhere on the field. I personally wouldn't. Again, it depends on what your team looks like. If you need some help, so I guess we'll have to. Not really sure on that one.
Yeah, we got to see it tonight, and I'm leaning towards. It sounds good. We had 8 carries for Debo yesterday, not many catches, but it was a slop fest of a game, so maybe it'd be different. And they love Melvin Gordon. See, the problem with Melvin Gordon is that coaches love him and find reasons to put him out there. So, and Rendon put the team out there. He put his team in the chat. I'll have to say, Rendon is look for a waiver to get rid of Allen Robinson. That's my advice. Get rid of Allen Robinson. Sell now. Get rid of him.
Yeah, it's actually I see it there. So it looks like a lot of receivers Some good receiver, a couple good running backs too. It looks like looking more at just a flex guy. I think. I mean, at that point, you really can't go wrong with either one. Almost when you're looking, he's got Jalen Hurts, Austin Eckler, and Alvin Kamara, so that's awesome. AJ Brown, DJ Moore, Elijah Moore, who struggled. It looks like the whole Jets team struggled yesterday. But if I had to make a pick, I would probably I think Debo's got just more upside. Like you said, they like Melvin Gordon. I think they're gonna manufacture touches for him and get him the ball as much as they can, I think.
Right.
So now we'll move to I guess I hadn't given my pick yet. The least impressive debut with the new team. Again, I'm going two guys. I'm going receivers. I was looking at just all the receivers this week. Devontae Parker really surprised me what he did or didn't do. Really thought they were going to use him, just a big body guy, been in the league for a while, a guy that Mac Jones can trust and go to, but only had 2 targets, 1 catch for 9 yards. Didn't really do a whole lot. Again, I didn't see much of that game, but I mean, I would expect him. You hit their big signing, or they traded for him, didn't they?
I actually forget, but I hope they didn't trade much for him. Because you know who was not surprised by Devontae Parker disappearing when the season began? Every Dolphins fan watching that game, because he's the summer soldier. You know, he is the Prince of Minicamp, and he went out there in that game. I don't want to hold it against him because the Patriots don't really have an offense anymore. They just have a random series of plays. But yeah, he was disappointing.
Yeah, he had the one really good fantasy year. I think that he kind of came on strong at the end a few years ago. But it kind of hurts for me. It not really hurts for me to see it. But Devontae Parker is from here in Louisville. He was just, I think, a year younger than me, or a year younger than I am. So going to Louisville, I'm not a Louisville fan, but those local guys you want to see do well. I really was expecting a lot more from him. Again, a long season. I think he could end up being one of the go-to guys for Mac Jones. But yeah, tough opener. Or tough debut. And then Robert Woods as well. I know he's coming off the ACL. They said he was, a full go, good to go. But again, he only got 2 targets, 1 catch for 13 yards. I think, Tannehill threw the ball in the 30s, I think, 30 times, more than 30 times. Would expect Robert Woods. Again, they traded for Robert Woods, brought him in to be their number 1 receiver, and he gets 2 targets in a game against the Giants.
Against the Giants.
Him to get him a lot more targets in that first game. So it's both of those were pretty unimpressive debuts with those new teams.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed.
But we focus. You mentioned it. We're big on the 4th down stuff, aggressiveness.
Yes.
There were some good calls. There weren't a ton of them yesterday. We'll see more as we get throughout the season. But I know there were a couple that you liked. One wasn't necessarily a 4th down, but the Giants, just speaking of the Giants, had a big call late. So I don't know if you want to kind of go through the 2 that stood out to you, or the 1 or 2 that stood out to you most.
My best call from what I saw, and I consider 2-point conversions kind of like 4th down conversions, right? Because it's a do or die situation, especially when it's 20-19 in the 4th quarter. And you're saying, screw this, we're going to go for the win. And not only I'm certain it's the best percentage. I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's a better percentage play. But when you are the Giants and you're Brian Daboll and you're trying to install a system here and try to get guys on board for you, and you turn to them and say, we're gonna go for it, and we're gonna get the ball to Saquon, and we're gonna do or die with it. If it fails, a lot of those guys walk out. Hey, we gave it our best. We absolutely gave it our best shot. We didn't trust it to the kicker in overtime. And if it succeeds, you get the enthusiasm that you're seeing from the Giants right now. So the Giants went for it late in the game after scoring a touchdown, went for 2-point conversion, 20-19. They threw a shovel pass to Saquon Barkley that may have been the worst shovel pass, non-Carson Wentz division, that I have ever seen. It was about to be completely blown up. There were 3 defenders around Saquon, and Saquon took his Nittany Lions pills and got away from all of them and leapt into the
made a great play, Saquon.
Made a personal 1-man against the world type play there. And it was really good. And that won the game. Again, we saw the Titans couldn't come back at the end of that, but that defined that game. And thank heavens. It's one thing to have 2 games going to overtime. It's another thing to have a Titans-Giants game going to overtime.
Yeah, and we know, I beat up on Joe Judge a lot the last couple of years for his lack of aggressiveness, and for good reason, but I can't imagine Joe Judge going for that. He'd probably run a QB sneak there or something and hope that they can get into the end zone. Yeah, Daboll, coming in to instill that winning culture, that tough culture, and get it, believe in your team, have your team believe in you. Like that's when you're a new coach in there. And he's got a lot of respect already, but I'm sure that helped even more in that locker room.
Right, and you're right. As an opposition to Judge, who would have been like, let's make the most perfect extra point we've ever made in history and forget all the other things. Now, Aaron Schatz is telling us in the chat that going for 2 was not the better percentage play for the Giants because it left the Titans at that point had too much time to come back for the field goal attempt along the way. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing if we really looked at the success rate of Giants plays, that's also a bit of a problem. Yeah. One thing for the NFL to have a percentage rate, and then the Giants have a lower percentage rate. But as Aaron said, getting the winning attitude and getting the guys to trust you, it's not analytics, but it's sort of like a logic thing for a team that has to start on this long journey.
Yeah, and like Aaron said, definitely the right decision getting that, that winning attitude. And that's kind of what we've talked about in the past. A lot of those decisions, people want the numbers on them. And a lot of times there's only 1% or 2%, difference. They're really close. It's more, and Aaron has mentioned this a couple times, even last year, it's more of just a gut feeling. Like it comes down to last year with John Harbaugh. He didn't have the defense at that point in that game against Green Bay to keep up. He's like, even if the numbers say, with Justin Tucker, the extra point's better, because if we get to overtime, I like my chances only needing to get to the 45-yard line to make a long field goal. But just that gut decision of kind of what you want to believe and that the environment there.
I like to say 1 percentage point of probability is not worth getting stuffed in a locker over.
Yep.
5 percentage points, 10 percentage points, you have to go 3 percentage points. 1 or 2 percentage points, at some point you have to look at it and say, these are humans, not economics models. And say, I might lose the team, I might demonstrate a lack of trust, whatever. Then it's time for human decision-making to come into play because our tools are not that accurate. They're not calibrated to a tenth of a decimal point, like others apparently claim to be.
Yeah, and mine comes from a guy, actually, one of them, a coach, Zach Taylor, who's we've seen be aggressive. He's kind of hit or miss, but he was more aggressive than not, it seemed, last year. They had 4th and 1 coming down into the first half at the Pittsburgh 35. They're down 17-3, so they're down big. Could have just gone with a 53-ish yard field goal, send out McPherson, hey, let's get some points before the half. But they went for it, got it. They went on to get a field goal anyway, but it was a 26-yarder compared to 53. So he knew, 1 yard, they have this revamped offensive line that wasn't doing great, but still, it's 1 yard, and he knew, hey, we can get this yard, give us a chance to get a touchdown. But they converted that. And then Miami, I mentioned this earlier, the 4th and 7 coming down at the end of the first half, already up 10-0. Could have just taken a field. It would have been a long field goal, or they could have punted. 18 seconds left. New England just used their last out and say, hey, they're going to kneel out the clock. Let's just go in the locker room up 10-0.
Right.
They went for it. That's where Tua hit Jalen Waddle over the middle, and Waddle took it the rest of the way for a touchdown. So that was really awesome to see.
That was a fun play. That was a stunning play. Again, these sort of, as we're all kind of like ripping on the Patriots a little bit, it's one thing to talk about their offensive woes. That was like an almost inconceivable defensive lapse here, where it's pretty much a routine slant. It's pretty much a routine slant, and he just goes directly to the house, and there's no answer to that.
Yeah, that's something you would expect to see from Tyreek Hill, who's now on the team. So you got 2 guys that can do that. Like they could be dangerous with those guys that can make plays like that. But in New England too, they've had the good defense, but they're not projected very high this year. Both of those, it was 2 defenses that are projected like the bottom 7, I think, that we had, if I remember that correctly. So kind of a little surprising, but yeah, Miami's defense had a much better game than the Patriots did yesterday.
Yeah, the Patriots, and I talked about this in walkthrough. We've talked about Patricia and et cetera. They don't have any speed. They have no big play capability on that offense. So when everything's going right, it's going to have to be matriculate down the field, which then introduces the margin of error that you don't have Josh McDaniels creating these sort of customized, well-installed game plans. You have the JJ and Silent Matt experience out there, and it's going to be a long season, I think, for the Patriots.
Yeah, it's the Miami would be my pick there too. I think we'll get to these teams as well. Would be my pick to come in second, because we all know outside of Buffalo, they're just all playing for second in that division.
Right.
So Miami looked pretty good for the most part yesterday. So now we'll get into some teams. We said overreaction, so we want to look at the panic level for some of these teams. Yes. Are we overreacting, or do we think it's legit? The Cowboys, we won't spend too much time on them. Pretty high for me. The injury with Dak Prescott is just it's disastrous for them. They're already without Tyron Smith, and now Dak. No Amari Cooper, no Cedric Wilson. Like they've got they've got CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. I think Noah Brown had had 4 catches or something yesterday, but very high for the Cowboys.
Absolutely. The Sean signal is up in the sky over Gotham right now. Absolute panic is merited for the Cowboys.
Yes, 100%. And the next team, I'll let you go first on this. The Green Bay Packers. I'll let you start this one off.
The reason the panic level for the Packers should be medium to high is because 11 wins is probably a failed season. 10 wins is certainly a failed season. This is not a team that can talk about, we were in the wild card mix and built things for the future, et cetera. This is a team that's really in the short window. And in a 10 or 11 or even a 12-win season, a second place in the division season, a fourth in the playoff seedings, if all those things come to fruition, you're going to have another year of Rodgers complaining to high heaven and the team trying to like move heaven and earth salary cap wise to improve things. So most teams, this would be, okay, the tackles come back next week. Jenkins, Bakhtiari come back. They'll develop these receivers, et cetera. It'll be fine. This is a team that just lost to a division foe, lost to a conference foe, lost tiebreakers along the way, fell a step behind the Buccaneers. That's a reason to really, really worry. Yeah,
I agree. Again, as a Packers fan, it's, like you said, medium level. It's game one. They got crushed last year in game one against New Orleans, and we saw what happened. Devontae Adams was there then, obviously. But, over half of Rodgers' attempts went to running backs and tight ends. Not super surprising, but at the same time, we know he throws to guys that he trusts. And after the Christian Watson drop, that was huge. Like, I don't think he got a target until – it might have been Jordan Love, or it was late in the game that he got targeted again. And, I mean – It's understandable. Rodgers said in his press conference, at the end of the day, these guys are all professional. Whether you're a rookie or not, you're a professional athlete. You've got to make plays that are there. He said, I made mistakes as well.
A lecture about professionalism from Aaron Rodgers by right. Oh my God. Go on.
We know he punishes guys for those things. We also know it's not good, especially for rookies, when guys lose confidence in themselves. Like, it's more, a lot of times it's with quarterbacks. We talk about this, but when you're a receiver that makes a drop like that, and Aaron Rodgers is visibly pissed off on TV, and the camera's going right to him. Right. Like, he makes it worse sometimes. I think he's got to be a little bit more patient. I think he probably has been. Still doesn't have a high level of patience, but that makes me a little nervous. But again, you said the tackle's coming back. It was week one. They struggled last year. It'll be next week will be big. Got the Bears next week, and then the Bucs after that. So Bears might not be as big a test. They won yesterday, but again, that monsoon slop fest you set up there against Trey Lance, who with the weather still didn't look great. Right. But yeah, if they don't look a lot better next week, then we're probably going to be pushing that up.
Telling Aaron Rodgers to be more patient is like telling a scorpion to be less stingy and poisonous. So that's not a bad idea. What was it like watching that as a fan? Like I'm watching it, and of course I'm sort of watching and writing at the same time, and I'm sort of cracking up at this offense after that Watson play, where it's like you couldn't come up with a more misdirection screen pass to a running back. Like they had to run the entire gamut of what was in the playbook.
Yes, that's what was so frustrating to me. And I was watching with friends. It was telling them it was everyone knows you're throwing to the running back. You're throwing to either Jones, Dillon, or whichever tight end is on the field. There are a couple of them on the field, but it's like it seemed like every pass was going within 2 or 3 yards from the line of scrimmage. It was all those close passes. Like that's not the Green Bay offense, and it was a struggle. And Aaron Jones and Dillon were breaking some of those and looked pretty good, but eventually you've got to get it downfield. I guess he just didn't trust the guys at that point. And Sammy Watkins was one I was kind of surprised didn't get a little bit more work as well. And we know week one Sammy Watkins is a little bit overblown because last year he had 4 catches for 96 yards. Wasn't as big of a week, but I would think him being a veteran coming in maybe would get a little bit more work as well. But it was frustrating. I mean, I picked Minnesota to win that game. I did not think Green Bay was going to win just with the receivers, and I think Minnesota's going to be very good this year, but was still very frustrating to see it in 23-7.
Right. And there was a lot of, hey, you know what? Don't like the Green Bay. You guys were inoculating yourselves. The Packers fans were inoculating themselves. I see them on Twitter. I see you guys, and it's like, hey, with both tackles out and the receivers, it's not going to look perfect, and don't overreact, and sort of building in the cushion for the loss there. But this wasn't just a loss; it was a 23-7 loss where everything was FUBAR for most of the game. So
it was never close. And deciding for some reason not to cover Justin Jefferson at all was pretty surprising to me. It seemed like he was wide open on every play, but
Yeah.
that's Justin Jefferson, so it's tough to stop him, but he just completely went off in that situation.
Who's next?
So we'll move on from Green Bay. I don't want to talk about that anymore. So we talk about New England. How are you panicked, or what's your panic level for New England after week 1?
I guess if I had any expectations for the New England Patriots, I would be panicking again for the reasons that we talked about. And the offense was about as bad as you could expect, and the defense wasn't heart-stoppingly, devastatingly like, "Oh, we got this covered for you."
Yep.
Now, I don't have a lot of expectations for the Patriots, and basically, and what I've been seeing from the Patriots press, it seems like everyone's sort of like realizes, no, this probably didn't work out. You know, the old days when like the people with like the Brady avatars on Twitter were coming after you, like those days are gone now, and it's a little more realistic. But reason to worry that this isn't something that's going to work out and be anything more than, hey, 8 and 9 because we played tough and ran the ball, and that's what it looks like.
Yeah, you said exactly what I had here in my notes. I would say I'm not too panicked, but I didn't really expect him to be very good this year anyway. Right. Sorry, Aaron. I know you're watching, but I know you're realistic as well. But I did pull it up, and we've got New England and Miami. The New England's defense is projected still in the bottom 10. Miami, I think, is going to end up being better. So it doesn't really surprise me that they lost. I did think it would be a little bit closer. I thought it would come down to like a field goal where New England covers, Miami wins.
That's what I thought. That's what I was.
Yeah, not panicked really at all, just given the expectations there. So I agree with you 100%.
I want to interrupt with a fantasy question from Abraham Avisha, who gives us a real Sophie's choice at running back. I'm guessing that's Bryce Hall, Pollard from the
Tony
Cowboys, or Jamal Williams.
Ooh,
I don't have I'm going to tell you right now, it's early in the week. I don't even have like next week's matchups in front of me.
Yeah, I don't know who the Jets play. I do know Breece Hall got 8 targets yesterday, and I think I didn't see a ton of that game, but I think I'd read somewhere that Michael Carter had a pretty big drop that after that they got Breece Hall a little bit more involved. That's when he got a lot more targets. Tony Pollard, I don't even know. I know Zeke. No one really for the Cowboys did well. I honestly, at this point, I know Cooper Rush got that win over the Vikings last year, but I don't really know if I would trust anyone. And with Pollard being, the number 2 running back, they've been wanting to use him more as a receiver, split out. But I don't know if I would trust anyone for the Cowboys right now other than maybe CeeDee Lamb, because he's going to get about 1,000 targets a game. Yep. And Jamal Williams, I think, has the healthiest role in that offense. Like, they used him quite a bit last year. DeAndre Swift had a big game, but Jamal Williams scored. They're going to use him. He's going to get some targets. So I would lean Jamal, but again, I haven't seen the matchups either. I don't have them off the top of my head.
Right. I would lean to going to Underdog Fantasy and going and being able to redraft for week 2. I mean, these aren't bad ball players, and I think Hall has potential. But you're right. I think a lot of what we saw from Hall was 24/7. Joe Flacco isn't even going to try to go downfield. Yep. He's worried about Carter's hands. He dumps off. This doesn't look like and Williams had the 2 touchdowns yesterday, but it was mostly short yardage work. I'm not sure where I'd go with it.
Yeah, I would lean Williams, but again, look for next week or later this week too. We'll have our fantasy rankings up for week 2 as well. So check back with us there, and we'll have that. And then we've got our Thursday fantasy and betting show with me and Tom Strachan. We'll cover that as well. We go through every single game, so we'll have a little bit more clarity there for you here throughout the week.
Awesome.
So yes, we got 2 more teams. We're coming close to time, so 2 more teams quickly on the panic meter. We mentioned not having expectations really for the Patriots. The Bengals are kind of on the opposite. I know they finished a lot stronger than as good as they actually were last year. Obviously, making it to the Super Bowl. But are you panicked with them? Again, we expected some regression, but how panicked are you after yesterday's game that Joe Burrow just looked awful in the beginning, at least?
But he settled down. It's kind of a minor panic. I'm going to turn to you since you were watching more of that one live. What went wrong with the offensive line in that game?
I'd say they revamped the offensive line, but they struggled. I mean, Burrow still got sacked a handful of times. TJ Watt just was all over the place. He's now hurt. Looks like he's going to be out for a couple months. But I mean, his first interception, the pick 6, was just not a good throw. I think it was Fitzpatrick made a pretty good play coming from behind, but just wasn't a good throw. They just, I don't know. Like I expected a lot more out of them. Like you said, the offensive line, they brought in a bunch of new guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super panicked on them either. I don't think Pittsburgh is really, especially with TJ Watt out and just Trubisky or Pickett, I don't expect them to be much of competition.
Right.
I think Baltimore, I know we have Baltimore ranked very highly, is going to be the one, their competition, and is probably or is the favorite to win that division. But I'm not too panicked after that game. It seemed like there was a lot of, we mentioned with the field goals and just kind of a lot of crazy stuff going on there. But week one, Burrow, we know he's a lot better than what he played yesterday.
Right, and that's it. And the Steelers do that to you. The Steelers come out there, disrupt you with their pass rush, put you in a slop game, and say, "Ha ha, you're in a slop game with us now." It's like wrestling the pig. They love it. They love being filthy. So the Bengals got lured into it. I'm not super panicked that this is going to be what we're going to see throughout the year.
And Pittsburgh did that week one to Buffalo last year. We saw Buffalo.
Yeah,
they were very inconsistent. They had the highest variance last year, but same thing happens week one. Mike Tomlin, one of the better coaches, one of the best coaches in the league, going to have his team prepared, and that defense was good. They're still a good defense. I think they were projected number one in the Football Outsider DVOA projections as the number one defense this year. So not super surprising. I expect a lot better from Cincinnati moving forward. We'll move on to some of the teams that had some good games, maybe, or I guess a couple of these got wins. But we're going to call it our Kool-Aid level. Are you drinking the Kool-Aid? Starting with Philadelphia.
No, and believe it or not, the Philadelphia fans that I was talking to were not drinking the Kool-Aid. They were worried about how the Lions jumped all over the Eagles at the beginning of the game and worried about how the Eagles let the Lions linger late in the game. So, again, for the Eagles, the expectations have changed a little bit. Now they look like the favorites. I believe they're like minus 150 now to win the division with the Cowboys out of there. So in terms of saying, they can win the NFC East, that's fine. I don't think that's Kool-Aid at this point. It's rising up to meet them. Yeah. There's still a lot of things need to see, particularly on defense, of this team coming together and playing more coherently against a better opponent.
Yeah. And Detroit, they're much better this year. They were tough last year. Week one, they did this where they were getting just crushed by the 49ers and came back, I think, to cover and lose by like 7 on a 2-point conversion. But I'm high on Philly this year. I know Aaron picked them as his Super Bowl favorites to make the Super Bowl from the NFC. The slow start was concerning. The end is concerning. But, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown were dogs yesterday. They were just good. They were awesome. So I expect a little bit better. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on them. At least for now. See, and after week one, I think they'll be a lot. That defense will be a lot better too. Fantasy wise, I picked them based on their week one matchup. They got to pick 6 and still finish with only like 5 points. Typically, you're in the double digits. They just gave up way too many points late, and I know that it is. It doesn't count a ton in the DVOA calculations, but garbage time defense is somewhat predictive, but not as much.
And it wasn't garbage time. It was like 8 minutes left in the third quarter.
Yeah.
And they're giving up 25, 30-yard plays down the field. I feel like they called off the blitz. And against Jared Goff, don't call off the blitz. Blitz him until he wets his pants. Just go nuts on him. But they did that, and it's like it wasn't 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter up by 2.5 scores or whatever. It was 8 minutes left in the third quarter, and that's the issue where it looks like from a coaching standpoint, like, we got this one in the bag. Like, that's not how you coach in the NFL.
Yeah. So Philly looks like we're mixed on that. New Orleans. New Orleans, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on them a little bit. They got off to a slow start for sure, down 26-10 with like 11 minutes left. They came back though. It was Atlanta, so it's kind of like how good are you really coming back against Atlanta? Michael Thomas though, it was good. It's good to see him healthy. He got the 2 big touchdowns late. Jarvis Landry had a huge game in his first game down there. They still won without a big game from Kamara. I don't think he had. I think he was under like 75 yards total or something. Didn't have a ton of like 4 catches for 20-something yards. The defense will be a lot better. They're our number 2 projected defense still. I think they're going to be good. I think they'll push Tampa for that division, but they struggled for a while. They turned it on, so I think they'll be okay.
They did turn it on at the end, but they were brutally bad for 3 quarters against an ACC opponent at this point with the Atlanta Falcons. And so I'm reserving judgment. They have Tampa Bay next week. I am not touching the New Orleans Saints Kool-Aid until I see some sense that they've got more on the plate than the Falcons just ran out of good.
Yeah.
Like toddlers at the end, or preschoolers. They ran out of good at 2:00 and they started going berserk and screaming and crying. That's what the Falcons do. Saints took advantage of it.
Yeah, New Orleans still using Taysom Hill, so that'll be interesting too to see what happens there.
It worked. I was like, oh no, and it's like, oh no, it still works. Whatever, go.
Yeah, they're committed to it. But the last one we'll talk about here, Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, I said they're my pick to overachieve their FO projection this year. I think they're going to win the North. To me, I think they're going to be a Super Bowl contender or an NFC Championship contender with O'Connell there now. Jefferson just unstoppable. I'm buying it there. They're one of my biggest picks this year. They won handily without a big game from Dalvin. Dalvin had been really good against Green Bay. He got 20 carries, still had almost, or I think he went over 100 yards between his receptions, or he was close to it. Madison, they actually had a lot more involved than I thought. But yeah, I'm buying it on Minnesota as much as I hate to say it.
You're in. And I'll say right now, they're still plus 150 to win the NFC North. Right now, the Packers are still plus 110. I can see the line not going cuckoo over a Packers loss, but you're still some value there if you really love the Vikings. And I was ready to buy in with Jefferson playing the way he did and the way Zadarius was playing earlier in the game. And then they got to that point where they just started playing not to lose. Mm-hmm. And on the one hand, it's like, oh, we got this under control. That's Aaron Rodgers. You don't know if you've got it under control because he could find Watkins. He could find Juwan Winfrey and say, you're my guy now, and then throw it down there. And there was a lot of that vintage. Here comes Kirk Cousins on 3rd and 6, 4-yard completion. Kirk Cousins on 3rd and 4, 2-yard completion. Like you can't shrink it enough late in this game. You're right. Cook was playing well, I think, early in the game, in the middle of the game, and then when it's time to get that, the running game doesn't work like that. So I'm moderately on board with them because of all the things you said. But I think if it's Kool-Aid up to this is the Vikings year, I don't think I'm capable of ingesting that kind of Kool-Aid.
Not yet.
No. I think I would spit it out and I would have a heart attack if I tried to drink Vikings Kool-Aid. So it's not happening.
Time will tell. Again, week 1. So we make our overreactions, but we've got a little bit of time left, so we'll go in. We can't forget Monday Night Football. Yes. Big game, not in the fact that we think it's going to be a good game, but Russell Wilson, his first game with Denver, returning to Seattle. Denver comes in as a 6.5-point favorite. How are you? What are you thinking about this game? How do you think it's going to play out? What are your picks for tonight?
Well, I'm stunned that the line has dropped to 6.5. There must be some action coming in on the Seahawks. I don't know who those people are. I don't know why they're doing it. I would advise them to stop doing it because I see this as while it's going to be an emotional game and there might be some high energy, I see this as a role for the Denver Broncos. And again, one problem we have is that we have not seen the Broncos at all at the preseason, haven't seen the Russ experience, didn't see any of their starters. So I'm working with a team off of paper and projections and things. But the other problem is we saw the Seahawks with Gino. We saw pretty much the starting off. It is what you think it is. It's going to be rough. There's going to be a lot of 3-and-outs. It's just going to be more and more opportunities for a pretty loaded Broncos offense. And I see the Broncos winning, covering, me being in bed at halftime.
Yeah, this is what I picked last week. Was my favorite pick of the week. Denver minus 6.5.
Yeah.
Seattle is my underachiever pick when we did our staff peaks. I was one of a few people that picked them as my number 1 draft pick next year. I just don't. They've still got some good players. The defense, we're projected not to be terrible, right. But just with Geno Smith, you said we saw it last year. We wish we hadn't seen it because it was not good. I think Russ comes out and smashes. Also, I'm all in on Cortland Sutton this year. His props, the prop bets for him that I like all of them: over 4.5 receptions, over 61.5 receiving yards, over 23.5 as his longest reception. And I would throw in an anytime touchdown as well. I just think we know he's that deep threat or has been that deep threat, but I also think he's going to be Wilson's just go-to guy when he needs a guy. In the red zone, he's big. He's a big body. He can be a big red zone target. Third down, I just think he's going to be the guy. I'm very high on him, and I would go with pretty much maybe all of those props for Cortland Sutton tonight.
I am playing those props. I'm playing the yardage prop. Right now, as we speak, you can see me clicking around, and I think I'll get the longest reception to lap prop. So let me do a little business here, and you can do the sign.
Exactly, yeah, and you can do again underdog fantasy. They got that pick 'em. You can do that for tonight. They'll have some props. They do some over unders on there where or more or less where you say is he going to have more than this many yards. more than this many touchdowns. They also do where you can go guys against each other. You can say, I think one of them from last Thursday, I don't have it up with me for tonight's game, but last Thursday was, well, Dawson Knox had more receptions and touchdowns than whoever it was on the other team having like carries. I think it was split carries. But things like that. And using promo code OUTSIDERS, you can get a deposit match up to $100. Again, at underdogfantasy.com, get a deposit match up to $100 with that promo code OUTSIDERS.
Yep. And they're played. Done and done. That
Yep.
easy. That is the reception one and the longest reception one for Sutton. Late.
I like it. So hopefully we'll see. Like you said, hopefully it'll be a game where we're in bed at halftime. Don't have to stay up too late. And East Coast is not the best coast for sports. At least I've come to see, especially in prime time. But Mike, thanks for joining me. It was a good week one. Had a great show. Hope all of you out there enjoyed us. And we'll be back next week. I know, Mike, you're on Wednesdays, I believe, with Aaron.
I'm on Thursdays too. So Thursday, Aaron and I do our picks and previews, and you do the gambling and fantasy show with Tom.
Yep, and you've got your walkthrough articles as well throughout the week, correct?
All week. Just keep going up. I'll throw something else on there. I don't even know what I'm writing anymore, but it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, you mentioned being in bed at halftime. I don't think you sleep, you don't eat. You're just walk through and shows with Aaron all the time.
That's the truth.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Enjoy the Monday Night Football game and check back with us throughout the week. And then Mike and I will be back next Monday.